Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. This program is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, who's expanding its services to offer low-cost blood screenings all year round, now offering walk-in convenience to get the blood tests you want when you want them. MyLabs, patient-ordered testing, is available in Farmington at the hospital's laboratory and the Outpatient Diagnostic Center on 30th Street. Also in Aztec at San Juan Health Partners Family Medicine at 120 Llanos Street. With nearly 20 tests available, there's an option for everyone. MyLabs, patient-ordered testing, a wellness service of San Juan Regional Medical Center. But let me turn to my guest who is here with me in the studio, who has made his way through the snow. He's already been to the office already and then came over to San Juan College. Kirk Carpenter is here. Mr. Carpenter, good morning.
Good morning, Scott.
Thank you very much. I guess you could give us a road report, and it's probably pretty slippery out there.
It is, and I would probably say unless you have a reason to go out, stay in. It's now I will say this, though. The county crews and even the city crews of Farmington have been out and about.
Sure.
And they always do a great job, but
you can get places if you have to and take your time, but still, if you don't have to go anywhere.
Nope, I would stay inside. It's a little dicey out there, snow-packed and icy and a little slushy, and it was snowing on the way over. So it's a great day just to warm up to a nice fire, put in some movies and drink some coffee or whatever you enjoy. And if you don't have to go outside, just stay inside.
Sure. Or maybe the kids can go outside and build a snowman or something.
Absolutely.
Don't get to do that very often.
No, we don't. I'll tell you, there's a lot of snow out there. It's when I pulled into the parking lot this morning, I got to make some fresh tracks. Our transportation director made some fresh ones. And, a lot of people don't know how early a lot of people get there that within the school. A lot of the transportation guys and other fellows that get out and check roads, and so there were some fresh tracks there. But I think we probably had, without any exaggeration, probably 6 inches of snow sitting at central office, and that was in the parking lot. Now, if you get on some of the north side of buildings, I walked through to go get some keys for a vehicle, and we probably had, honestly, I'd say maybe 10 inches in some places. It's amazing how much snow piled up over there in Aztec, and it was still snowing. So there's a lot of snow, a lot of moisture. Obviously, we need it.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
We never want to not have our kids at school, but there's a time and a place when that needs to happen. And today was absolutely not a day to take any chances with getting buses out there and even vehicles for kids that drive. So it was a no-brainer. I know we got ours called a little bit later than others, but that's just because we were in communication with people, and I had to get to a certain place where we could do that. So it was there's a lot of snow out there everywhere, and so
right. And I know what a lot of folks sometimes forget is that even though they may live in town where roads are certainly maybe a little better conditioned, but your buses are heading out to places like Cedar Hill and the Colorado border and out at Navajo Dam, and those conditions could be a lot different than what you see in town.
Oh, they always are. And I think in town, those roads, if we can get to the roads, that's one thing. And there are places where they have plans where parents can bring their kids to the main road, and we've tried to do that some, but it's very difficult. And you bring up a great point. The main roads, those are always the best shape, but you go to roads where you can't even see the road itself.
Right.
I mean, you don't know in fact, if you don't know the road, you go out, you don't know if it's dirt or if it's pavement. And I think all the districts around here all have that. And that's why sometimes you'll see one district that may have a 2-hour delay and another one that's closed, just because of the difference even in temperature. Aztec's usually 5 to 7 degrees cooler. I know when I drive over in the mornings, invariably on some days you'll drive and it's okay, and then you hit Flora Vista and that area, and you
starts to get a little slippery.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah. And so it's amazing, just a little bit of difference in distance and even elevation a little bit. You get Crouch Mason, some of those places, and it all changes. So
sure.
And obviously when you get north of Aztec up towards Colorado. So it all changes for us in the different districts. We all have different elements we have to deal with, believe it or not, in just the short areas that we are all in from each other. So, but we communicate with each other a lot. I know early in the mornings and even last night we were communicating with each other about what are you guys seeing in your district, what are you thinking, and we try to make similar decisions when we can.
Right.
But obviously we'll make the best decisions for our own districts and our kids and our staff as much as possible, as soon as possible.
A lot of the districts, and yours included, I think, called a 2-hour delay even last night, knowing how the conditions would be to start the day today, and then went ahead and called it and closed for the day later on when you kind of saw probably the forecast that we were probably going to get more snow throughout the day. And many times it just kind of stops overnight, and then the sun comes out, and the 2-hour delay is all you need. But today's a different day.
We did, and we had guys out last night, Mr. Laws and some of his folks, the mechanics were out driving, checking certain places, and we said, we need at least a 2-hour delay at that time.
Right.
And then overnight, obviously, things, the Mother Nature dropped some more snow, and it early this morning it wasn't going to let up, and temperature is always what we watch. So it was, like I said, a no-brainer. We try to make it as early as we can. So that folks can make decisions, because a lot of them obviously are working and they need to make arrangements for kids. So we did, and it's not letting up out there. So
it is not. And one final question, Mr. Carpenter, about this issue, and that is the calendar, because I know sometimes if you have too many of these, it may affect your school calendar. You always try to build in a few snow days and 2-hour delays and things like that when you build your calendars. But how are you looking? Still some wiggle room to go before May?
Still some wiggle room. It's all. We have early release every Monday, so that we look at the instructional hours now, and you have to have 1,080 at secondaries, and then you have to have 990 at the elementaries, and so we're pretty good with both. But I think this week is going to test us a little bit and put us right to the wire. Maybe we have to see what happens the rest of the week, but the forecast doesn't look very good. So we might get tested and pushed up against some limits, and then we'll have to see how we handle that.
Sure.
In years past, sometimes we've added minutes to the day. We try to get done before Memorial Day, but we also have days built in afterwards if we have to. So right now we're okay. But again, I think might get into a little bit of a battle with Mother Nature on the calendar and what we need to do. But we'll deal with that appropriately, and we will not in any way ever let a calendar drive our decision making. Safety will always be first and foremost, and then we'll deal with the calendar appropriately, because what we need to take care of our kids and staff first and foremost. So the calendar will be secondary, and if we get into a crunch with time, then we will come together and make the adjustments we need to.
Will you plan for that? Just in case you have
Absolutely.
A plan for that,
Yes,
if it
we
happens.
Do.
So
we do.
There you go. And I'll let you use the term that we use here in broadcasting, stay tuned.
That's perfect. And you know what, Scott, you're always on top of things. So
I don't know about that.
I think that is perfect. We will have people stay tuned.
Stay tuned to see what happens. Well, I wanted to thank you for that. And I know these conversations and these decision-making processes that you just described are going on in districts throughout the county. It's kind of the same thing in Farmington and Central Schools and Bloomfield and wherever we're talking about school delays or closings. They go through the same kind of routine that starts early in the morning, if not even the night before.
It does. And there's a lot of great people doing it. And superintendents, obviously, I know they have the final say, but I will tell you that there's a lot of people that go to their superintendents with information. They're the ones that are out. And I know a lot of the other superintendents get out as well. I always like to try to get out and see what it's like too. But, there's a lot of trust that goes into the people that are out on the roads. There's no decisions being made from living rooms. These people are out checking, and so that they themselves are putting themselves out there on these roads that are not very safe when they're out there. And so we just thank them, not just our guys in our district and the gals in our district, but the guys and gals everywhere in all the county that go out there and get out on those slippery roads and make decisions, the best decisions we can for all of our kids in our county. So I thank all of them, because it's like I said, when they're out doing it, they're by themselves out there. So we just appreciate the work they do across the county.
Right. My guest this morning, Aztec School Superintendent Kirk Carpenter, is here, and I do want to ask you about the election that was held in the Aztec schools and Bloomfield schools, and I think Central Consolidated as well, for this mill levy fund that is used, I know, in Aztec schools for, I believe, technology and maintenance and some of those things, but it did not pass in Aztec and Bloomfield. But I want you to speak about what that means for Aztec schools, and it puts you in a tough spot, does it not?
It does, and it's it just saddens you that it didn't. We obviously respect that people didn't approve it. However, in saying that, we will probably look at what we need to do in the future and maybe go back out. I think there's a lot of confusion about the mill levy election, and I say that because I think a lot of people thought that this was new. It wasn't. It was something that was continuing, and we tried to get around that as much as we could. We got around it in the media. We got around it. We talked about it here on this radio show. We put it out on Facebook. But a lot of people felt like this was something that was new and it was going to increase taxes significantly, even though we said, no, it's minimal. But mill money it's imperative. It goes for everything from toilet paper to activity buses. I mean, it's that broad, and
you can use it for a lot of things. The district can use it.
Absolutely.
Not salaries, not staff, but other stuff that you need in schools.
And it literally runs two departments, the technology and the maintenance department. I mean, the things that they're using right now today to clear the snow and put the salt down, that's all mill money, and it's for essential things. And so it's $1.3 million for us annually. And that's down from when it was, in 2008-9, it was 2 or 3 times that. So
right.
It's not like we have a lot of it. We've had to do with less over the years, and we understand any tax increase. But $200,000 home, $8.60 a year, and
a year,
yeah. And we tried to get that out, and we felt like we did a good job. But there's a mood in this country about any kind of tax increase, and I think we're seeing that filter down even into schools. So, but the bottom line is we can't do without it because we can't pull that from operational. We have to supplement other things with operational. Aztec is one of the lowest per pupil funded districts in the state, and so there's a lot of pressures and a lot of things we have to deal with on that side of things as well. And it's just not an option not to have that funding, and so we are going to have to relook at what we do, and if and when we will probably decide to go back out and try to get around it again to make sure people fully understand what it is, and how it's going to work, and the necessity of it. It's just it's not an option not to have that funding,
right? Because
without it, then there are going to be programs cut. There are going to be teachers and positions cut, probably administrative positions cut, and that district will not be the same district. And we won't have, like I said, the programs that we currently have, whether it's in athletics and activities. It will have to go to that level because of the nature of cuts we've had to make over the years just to balance budgets.
Right. Now, let me make sure I understand this correctly, because it was my understanding that the mill levy was being asked to just be increased back to what it was before.
Right.
So you still have that lower mill levy money coming in. Is that true or none at all?
We do until a certain time, and then that's going away. So
it will not be renewed.
$1.3 million will have to be made up to provide for toilet paper, paper towels in the bathroom, to the cleaning supplies and all those things. We still have to provide that at somehow out of a budget.
I see. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. And with all due respect, I was watching some of the Facebook comments, and I think some of your voters need some math skill renewals.
Well,
need to, because it was a little confusing, because we don't talk about mills very often, and that is, what is it, a tenth or hundredth of a penny?
Yes, it was very.
And that's what I think was messing up the math on a lot of folks, is they weren't calculating that correctly and figuring out that it was just $8 a year, and they were coming up with a lot larger number, and that was disappointing, I think, for folks watching from outside.
It was disappointing, and I think the most disappointing thing was we can only say vote.
You can't take a stand.
We can't take a stand, but we also made it very clear, if you have questions, please ask.
Right.
And so many times we get frustrated if we have kids, our own kids, when they don't ask questions. And on an important issue like this, we had so many people not ask questions. We had so many people that thought they knew what was going on and posted out there and became negative, anti against this on social media right up front. And that's what saddens me.
And I think we can certainly respect someone being anti-tax increase if they have the correct information in their post. And that, I think, is the frustrating part maybe that you saw and we saw. But let me ask you then, the plan is maybe to go back to voters in another type of election?
We're definitely looking at that. We're looking at a lot of things. I think when you look at taking away programs, athletic programs, activity programs, cutting staff, increasing class size, because one might say, why would you have to do that if this mill funding's for supplies and running technology? Well, you have to provide those things. And the only way you provide those things is to pull it out of operational. When operational pays for administrators and teachers and these other things like sports and activities, $1.3 million, you have to find that money. And
I need money for toilet paper. It used to come out of this bucket, and now that bucket is gone, so I need to find it from another bucket.
Yeah, so
and that may be paying for athletics or everything else you're mentioning.
Right. So do we now put that on a supply list for kids to bring? I mean, we can't do without that.
Sure,
and it's not an option. I mean, I'm sorry, but I don't think toilet paper is a nice frill to have at school, or paper towels, or those types of things, or salt to put on sidewalks to clean the ice off during winter storms. I mean, or desks to sit in the classroom, or chalkboards to write on, or the carpet on the floor when it needs to be replaced, or walls being painted. I mean, those are not frills, and so we cannot do without that funding. So if it can't come from us being provided that, again, by taxpayers, which we appreciate, but those are the things that need to be provided in order to produce responsible citizens in our society. And so we need to look at it. And I will tell you, I'm not in favor of cutting activities. I'm not in favor of cutting athletic programs. I'm not in favor of reducing our teaching staff and even administrative staff to where we are trying to improve instruction and keeping assistant principals at schools at elementary where we have over 400 kids to help improve instruction, when maybe we need to clarify and hopefully get a better understanding and make sure the people that are out there giving bad information, we say, hey, wait, let's talk before you do this, to make sure we have an opportunity maybe to go back out to voters. You give me a choice on one of those, we'll go back out to voters and say, this is real information. Now let's relook at this and get a better understanding. And if we didn't do a good job the first time, I'll take the blame.
Sure.
I'm not a proud person, but we'll do what's right for kids.
We're getting some greetings on our Facebook page, Mr. Carpenter, from your district. So good morning to folks watching us in Aztec this morning, and giving you a shout out, Mr. Carpenter. And I think maybe for those folks who are agreeing with what you're saying this morning, they have a job in this maybe to call out if they have friends on social media that are posting not necessarily wrong, not necessarily information that they don't like the tax increase, but if it's patently wrong or false, I think we all have an obligation to call them out, or at least to try to correct them. And they can certainly vote no if they still decide to vote no. But if they're voting no because of incorrect information, that needs to be pointed out in a nice, respectful way. Everyone is what I would say.
Yes, and like I said, I will take full blame if there was confusion or if we didn't get to write what was on the ballot. We don't get to be in charge of the legal language. If there's confusion, or if we didn't do a good enough job to explain things, I'll take blame. I'll take full blame. We didn't get this one to pass last time. We had to make some adjustments and go back out. It's not that we are not honoring the democratic process, but there was a lot of confusion. And I will just say this. If there's anything about Kirk Carpenter that I think people understand, is that I love kids, and I'm all about kids and staff. And we have to provide for them. And because of the amount of confusion we saw, if you give me as a person or our team an option, the last thing we want to do is do anything detrimental to kids. And cutting programs and those things is detrimental. So another option, if we can go out and make it more clear, then I'll take blame. It wasn't as clear. Then we'll sit down and say, how do we market it better, up to the lines of saying, this is what it's about, because we can't tell you how to vote. we can tell you to vote. But then it wasn't clear. Shame on me, Kirk Carpenter. We want to make it more clear and have another voice on this for our kids.
One other question about this issue, Mr. Carpenter, and then we'll go to something else. But this was a mail-in ballot, which was another new thing. Yes. I think the first of its kind.
Right.
I think voter participation was up, which is always nice to see.
It is.
And so in a future ballot, then, would this be another mail-in question, or would it go back to folks having to go to the polling place, or do you have that option?
Probably go to the polling place, and I know right now even in the legislature there's some bills that would adjust some things, and it'd probably be a walk-in, which could be more beneficial. But we did have more votes and more people participate, which is always good. But again, I think the biggest thing we missed was the opportunity to sit down with folks. We had the people that came in and spoke with us. Even people on fixed incomes that came in, when they spoke to us, they said, I understand. I had questions, but they came to us. And I think that's the most frustrating thing. The misinformation, people putting things out there and just not asking.
Right.
You know, if we want to improve things in our society, and it comes at a cost. And when I say that, again, I am not downplaying any kind of increase. All we ask is that we get the right information out there, and then you make an educated decision on what's best, and what's best for you, and what's best for our society. And what's the only way we create a strong democratic society is if we create an educated one. And the way we do that is by having the right information to make an educated decision on what's best for our schools and our society. So again, where we go in the future and when, we will see. But we need to do what's best for our kids, and so we'll make those decisions in the near future.
All right, we'll check with you. And as we say, we'll stay tuned, Mr. Carpenter, to what you, and I know the school board is really the driving force in a lot of some of these decisions. You work for them, and we'll see what they decide to do.
Yeah, we've been knocked down, but we're going to get back up.
All right, very good. Let's take a short break. Kirk Carpenter is my guest this morning. He is Superintendent of Schools with the Aztec School District, of course. There are numerous school closings throughout San Juan County this morning. In fact, I think it's safe to say that all schools in San Juan County are closed today because of the weather. You can go to our website at ksje.com for the latest list. We'll take a short break. Back with more with my guest here in just a moment. This is KSJE. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, your community hospital with a rich heritage that dates back to before New Mexico was a state. We've been improving the health of the Four Corners since 1910. As a nonprofit hospital, San Juan Regional Medical Center is a values-driven organization. We strive to deliver on our mission to personalize health care and create vitality and enthusiasm in healing. We are here for you when you need us, offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services. I'm Scott Michlin. My guest here on the radio, as I mentioned, Superintendent Kirk Carpenter, has made his way to the radio station this morning, and I appreciate it very much, Mr. Carpenter. Thanks for coming over.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
You bet. Talking about the weather we did earlier, and just now about the mill levy election, and we will be staying tuned to see what the district needs to do about that. But I want to turn our focus now to Santa Fe. We're in the second half, I think, of the 60-day session, and lawmakers have said they want to make education a priority. I think we've seen that maybe from the new governor, and certainly it's always easier to do when there's a budget surplus. And what are you hearing from Santa Fe? Is some of that money going to trickle down to Aztec schools?
Yeah, at all schools, and obviously we welcome it. That they have made it a priority. But I think it's all going to be in the details.
Always is, right?
And so the bills that are moving, the budget bills, there absolutely is money in those.
This is when you remind me about the above-the-line and the below-the-line funding, right, and what that means for districts like Aztec.
And that all has changed. I think a lot of the below-the-line, we're seeing less of that in programs by the public education department. Some of those programs have actually moved above the line. For example, the Reads to Lead is an example where they had grants in Reads to Lead where districts had to apply. They've moved a lot of that funding above the line so that more districts can participate and have reading coaches and those types of things. So it's not a lottery system. And when I say that, we need to have opportunities for all kids. And so that's an opportunity where a lot of that funding is above the line. So
seems like
there's funding, but you have a choice. If you don't need a reading coach, you already have them, then you have that funding for other things that you can do within your district.
Right. It seems like some of that might be more workable for bigger districts that can go after some of this money. And is that what you found? And then districts that are smaller, and there's even districts smaller than Aztec, that maybe don't have the staff to apply or write the grants or go after some of this money when it's on a competitive type of situation.
And that's exactly the case. I mean, even a district our size, it's difficult sometimes to even write for grants because you may not have the staff. And smaller districts, obviously, it's very difficult. So, and that's why they rely on with the regional educational co-ops, which now in our area we're going to have one finally.
Right.
So that helps to have those agencies to do that for you, and then they oftentimes join up in REC to get those. But so it takes the pressure off in some cases. But so we're seeing a kind of a shift in the below the line funding, moving to above the line with this administration.
And that, again, for everyone listening, means that makes it available to every district. Everybody. Or more districts. I guess it's not as competitive is what you're talking about.
Not as competitive. And the more money you see below the line, which is more programmatic and designated to specific things, it disequalizes the funding formula because it ties that money up and it only goes to certain things. Now, there still is funding down there for programs which we've been involved with, like the Principals Pursuing Excellence at Farmington. In fact, Bloomfield, Central, we're all involved with it. Mm-hmm. Teachers Pursuing Excellence. There's still money down there. In fact, there's even more. Those are great programs. So there's still some of that, and that's appropriate. But some of the things that I'm not seeing in the budget are some of the incentive programs, like for teachers and their evaluation rankings and some of those things. So, and personally, Scott, I'm okay with some of that only because our evaluation system and the student achievement and the integrity and the validity of some of that, I think a lot of people have questioned. Not that we don't want to reward our great teachers, but I think we have to get a system that is absolutely sound. And right now, as we all know, with Park's been removed, and we're trying to figure out what we're really going to do moving forward, even with the evaluation system. So. And honestly, I think it needs to be everybody, a team approach, not just individually. But so I think legislatively, we're absolutely seeing a lot more funding coming to education, and rightfully so, because we need to pay our professionals as professionals, and our teachers, everybody across the board. Mm-hmm. And they're looking at different things. They're looking at with teachers. There's legislation looking at 7.5% for them. Or actually for principals, and then for teachers looking at different levels of 40, 50, and 60,000 for level 1, 2, and 3, and then phasing that over 3 years to increase slowly even more than that, where it goes to 40, 50, 60 the first year, then 42, 52, 62, and then getting up all the way to 45, 55, 65. So there's a lot of different legislation and a lot of bills, and the budget bill, it's kind of like sausage. You don't want to see how it's being made, but at the end, you hope it really looks good and tastes good. And so absolutely a lot of money, a lot of revenue. And I think the big question is the balance of how careful, but, you want to take some chances and get some money into people's hands, but you have to make sure that you have plans to make sure that you can maintain and sustain over the course of several years, because all-time highs in revenue with oil and gas.
That's right.
And but we have to be very careful with it as well, make sure we can sustain it, and we have to think about the lawsuit. The lawsuit that the state has on it this was successful, but there's going to be some appeals. But I think the legislature also is thinking about that they do some things to make sure that they have good effort to honor that. and show that they are putting money into education, and they are. They are absolutely putting money into education for the right reasons, for everybody, not
Right.
just teachers, but administrators, everybody.
And that lawsuit is still continuing, right?
It's continuing.
And it will probably for a while. So
It will.
We'll be talking about that for a while. But this was something that a judge said that the state is not funding education appropriately enough in violation of the state constitution, I believe is what kind of the ruling said. And so that's why it's such big news and why we're talking about it. And we'll continue to talk about it. So.
And especially with kids that are at risk. And so the at-risk indicators have changed. That's going to benefit a lot of districts, and all districts.
Right, right.
And we did see a change when we speak about unit value, which drives a lot of funding. We saw a change in the unit value before January ended, which is when they have to make that change. So all districts benefited by that. The unit value went up by, I think, $34, a little bit over $34. So all districts benefited before the actual from last year to last year's unit value. And so that's always the thing that drives the funding in districts. So that was another positive. So we're seeing a lot of positive things happen. And, I just want to say, too, I think we're going to see some good things happen in education. I'm filled with hope and optimism with the new public education department, the new administration. I think their whole mantra is they want to transform. It's not a reform. They want to transform education with educators. In the past, I think we saw a lot of reform to education and a lot of reform being done to schools. And so even the administration and the legislation seems to be geared that way as well. And so we'll see what happens. We're over halfway there. It's less than a month now.
That's right.
Left in the session, and we know in about the last 15 days is when they really get a lot of things done. And so I'm optimistic, and then also concerned about the direction maybe some bills will go with how the legislature is going to handle the future of whether it's oil and gas in our state, because that is such a key for us in funding. But also the education bills, because they're looking at adding school days. And now,
right.
Whether they go just to days or the hours you still have to go and how that affects schools, that's a key, because extending the school year and just going days, we can count hours or days. And then also professional development days is out there as well. They're wanting at it. Make sure you have up to 10 professional development days. And again, there's hours that can be counted. So there's a lot of question of how things will actually finalize themselves out. And in the elementary school, one other thing to mention is the K5 and K3 plus, which means extended learning times for schools that qualify. It's not a lottery like it used to be when that was one of the below the line. This is
right.
above the line, where
right.
schools that qualify, all schools can do this and have more learning days for those kids that need it, up to 25 more in the summer, and the funding's there. So the amount of money that's being pushed into education, it's absolutely probably an all-time high, appropriately so. But again, it's just going to be interesting to see how things are massaged, and to make sure that all the money comes back to the districts, and that districts can afford it too, because a lot of times when raises are given to districts, it may seem like it's funded, but it's not always totally funded, because you have to move teachers that start on a salary schedule, but you have a lot of other teachers that may be close that you also have to bump up, and sometimes those things aren't totally funded. So we'll
right.
see how it lays out.
Important to pay attention, and a lot of these things get maybe finalized in the last few days of the session, and so if folks are really concerned about this, I would encourage them to pay attention.
Yes.
and to keep watching these bills as they move through. Real quick, Mr. Carpenter, you mentioned some of the oil and gas bills. I think I've noticed there was one about increasing royalties paid by oil and gas companies. That seems to have died a quiet death in committee, and another oil and gas bill about a moratorium on fracking in our state seems to also have not passed one of the committees. And I know for some of the oil and gas supporters, who there are a lot of in this county, they were glad to see those bills go away.
And that's it's a good thing not to try to jump on sides of energy, but I think we need to understand in our state, I think we're very responsible what we're doing with some of those things, and I think we need to understand too with revenue in our state.
It's clear that industry and revenue from that industry is driving these surpluses in the state budget. It's clear. And
driving the revenues, but I think doing it responsibly. And so I guess my personal opinion, saying that is, if we're careless, then we need to take a better look. But I think if we're doing something and doing it responsibly, then I think we need to continue to move forward for the right reasons, and continue to fund at the levels we are. Because if we make some radical changes on that industry for reasons that are unwarranted or unfounded, then I think we need to ask ourselves, where are we going as a state, and education as a whole too, because right now with what we're talking about, what other means do we have to fund? You never hurt yourself trying to add more and find other ways to become more of a way to sustain funding. But I think we need to be very careful that we don't make any radical changes for the wrong reasons without having a sound and founded reason to do so.
Still want to diversify the economy,
absolutely,
but
always.
Be careful what you do to the existing economic drivers, I guess, is what I hear you saying.
And you always help me finish my thoughts and say it so eloquently. So
thank
you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carpenter. We are out of time, unfortunately, so I kind of summarized, I think, what you said, and hopefully I did it.
Perfect.
Did it well. Thank you for coming over. Enjoy your snow day. I hope you don't have to go back to the office for too long today.
I will a few stops here and then back over, but the days are usually quiet, but they're nice. But we, again, just tell everybody to stay inside if you can and stay safe.
All right. That's good advice, Mr. Carpenter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kirk Carpenter, my guest here from Aztec Schools on KSJE. The time is 8:55. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.